right. Give this 1 second while we go live. Perfect. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. Happy to be back here on another MSP Initiative Live, and very excited to be joined here by Marvin Bee, the one and only Uncle Marv. So I'm just going to go through a couple quick housekeeping items, and then I want to pass the mic over to Marv for a little bit to kind of warm us up and get us into this. So first and foremost, we are less than 2 weeks out now from the biggest party of the year. IT Nation's coming in. We've got a massive band. So we brought in Ezra Ray Hart. So that is Sugar Ray, Better Than Ezra, and Tonic formed a 90s super band. Everyone loves the 90s. People love nostalgia. So we are going to bleed out our 90s hearts and just have an awesome time that night. We've got 90s Snack Station. We've got Cigar Roll. We've got all sorts of great stuff coming in. If there's anything you have questions about, reach out to us. We are very excited for the party. I always suggest registering ahead of time. It just makes life easier. You've got that big line. Moving 2,000-3,000 people is not easy. We had 2,200 people there last year. I'm sure it will be even more this time. So get registered early. It saves you a lot of time. Get you through that line, get you in there, and get you drinks faster, because that's what we all like. And of course, get you a good spot at the concert. But past that, if you haven't registered, head over to mspinitiative.com and get registered now, or check out any of our social feeds. We've got them going on all of those. Now, in terms of housekeeping for today's webinar, got any questions, want to ask a chat, anything like that, we are paying attention on the Zoom. We will try to pay as much attention on social as possible. We've got Jen in the background. If she sees anything, she'll definitely flag us. But now I'd love to turn it over to the one and only Marvin Bee.
Well, hello, Alec. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I wish I had a nice setup like you, but I'm not running a full-blown professional podcast all the time. And looking forward to talking about that. You definitely got some pretty interesting guests and really good setup going.
Well, thank you for the comment, but this ain't professional. Okay, just that's just a couple of cheap shelves thrown up there. If you saw the rest of it, you'd see the homemade blankets and stuff like that. But it's great to at least have a space where I can do this stuff. We've got the rest of the space that we're still trying to figure out what to do with. Of course, we got to see if we're still going to be here. The landlord keeps raising the rent, so it's not cheap to run a business anymore.
Yeah, it's really not. It's crazy because you thought with COVID, right, when everyone pulled out of the offices, you expected kind of a dip in that to happen. And if anything, it's been the opposite. Commercial real estate seems to be skyrocketing, and it's crazy because you think, how many people didn't go back to the office, right? How many people held out? And if I pulled out of the office and I've lost that, overhead, and now I'm looking back and it would be kind of nice to be able to have coffee with people in the morning. And I look at that rent and it's double what it used to be. I'm not going in. That's not changing.
It is interesting. I do have a couple of clients that expanded right before COVID and never actually used that new space. And here we are almost, coming into year 4, and that space is still empty and they're paying for that space. And, especially for 2 of the clients, half the office isn't coming in. So they actually need to condense.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I would think that landlords would, be trying to give incentives for people to move in and stuff. But instead, I think because people are not going back, they're trying to, jam it to the rest of us to cover for that empty space.
I mean, you're also down in Florida, which has just been absolutely booming.
Yeah, everything is high. Really, home real estate. I mean, our home on paper is twice the value than when we purchased it 10 years ago. And we haven't really done much.
It's unbelievable how that's happening. I mean, you guys feels like you can't build roads fast enough down there to fit the people that are coming to them.
Oh, we can, because we're stacking them and building skyscrapers as fast as we can. No real new infrastructure. So it'll be fun in a few years.
Crazy. Yeah, we we're definitely seeing it quite a bit. I also think back to the people who signed long-term leases. I know when I was at Autotask, we'd signed a 10-year lease on our tech park that we ended up getting bought out on from a pharmaceutical company when they moved to the new office and rebranded as that and everything. But I think about people who are in that scenario. You got 10-year lease, half your team isn't coming into the office anymore. It's a problem.
Yeah, we did a 5-year here when we
Mhm.
first got in, and we had just renewed for another 5 when the building across the street became available. And it's a bigger space,
Mhm.
more parking, which is what I was hoping for, but they wanted like 1.3 million in terms of a purchase price, or 7 grand a month to rent, which was double what we're paying here. But we had some other space down the road that was half for the same amount of space. But the whole idea of moving and convenience, and I've got such a wicked commute that it would have tripled to go to the new space. So if you're
Right.
talking, 2 minutes to go to my office now and 6 minutes to get to the new space, that's what we had to consider. Is it worth it?
I mean, yeah, I get that. I think for me, it's always just the process of it. I mean, breaking down the office, no matter what, you're going to lose efficiency. You're working at night to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, the headache to do it just to, potentially have the same amount of space. It's like you guys have been pretty healthy in terms of your growth and stuff like that. So, question is, are you going to outgrow that? Right?
Yeah, we've been lucky. My business has been good. Of course, I've intentionally done some things where we don't grow like other companies grow. I'm not, adding clients every year. We are using that, boutique style model where we're just simply growing with our customers as they are. I'm able to raise prices,
Mhm.
on them from time to time. We're adding services, things that I did not do for them years ago. Cybersecurity, of course, has forced us to add some stuff for them. And as long as they're willing to pay, that's fine by us. So we've been lucky in that regard. So I don't have, the depth of
Yeah.
clients that everybody else does. I've only got, as of this morning, I looked, I've got 386 devices under direct management, which is
Okay.
our full managed services, but we've got 1,100 devices across the portfolio. So it
Cool.
sounds good. And just trying to, we're right on the brink of having to do some more growth.
Yep. So let's get into that. Obviously, you become kind of the voice of the MSP in a lot of regards. Let's rewind back to how did Marvin decide to become, to go into IT and start his own business? What was that story?
Well, funny you should say the voice of the MSP, probably not the voice of the MSP,
A
probably
voice of
a
MSP.
voice. And probably I was just talking to somebody, and it's more like, the baby Howard Stern of the channel, where I say the stuff that people don't want to say publicly, but I'm still cautious. But to answer your question about how I got started, uh, some of the people that have been with me a while have known the story. I don't ever tell the whole story because it's kind of ridiculous, but I never wanted to be a tech. Uh,
Okay.
I thought techs were ridiculous. I was a jock. I was on student government. I was one of the popular kids. And so didn't want to hang around the computer guys, but I was in gifted program. I was in some of the higher advanced math and science classes. So I had school with all the geeks and
Okay.
stuff. And in my college years, I actually roomed with head of the computer lab. And so we always had computer parts laying around the dorm room, fixing computers. I actually ended up helping, working in the computer lab as a tutor. And so as I went through grad school, as I started my corporate life, I always ended up being the guy that did the computer stuff, which is not too similar from a lot of stories that we hear. A lot of us ended up just kind of doing this.
Yep.
And the guy that I was selling computers to, because I would take computers I'd find or get from businesses, rebuild them, take them to the used computer store, and he'd buy it from me for 600, turn around and sell it for 1,200. And that was cool back then, back in the 90s. And he finally said to me one day, he goes, "When are you going to come work for me? You build computers better than my guys." And I said, "Well, can you pay my salary now?" And at the time, he couldn't. But 3 months later, he called me back up and he said, "Okay, I can afford you now." And so I left the job I was at to go work at the computer store. 2 years later, I was running the service department, and we were getting so many requests for us to come on site to do work for them, and he wouldn't do that. So I said, you know what? I can make just as much money going out to businesses and homes as I am at the store. At the time, I didn't think I'd have to work as many hours. So that's how I get started. So I gave him my resignation, started full time. That was in 1997, and I'm still grinding.
That's awesome. I feel like that's always the gut feeling though. It's like, I'm gonna make my own hours. I'm gonna work my schedule. It's like, no, you're not. You're gonna work all the time.
Yep.
At least for the first couple of years. But that's awesome. I did not know that about you. What sport did you play?
So I was football, basketball, and track.
Wow, okay. Nice. So you're all across the board.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like you're right. We always kind of joke about that when I explain to people what our industry is. I'm always like, yeah, they're like, oh, you're in IT. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's different, right? It's a small contained area of IT. It's literally an entire industry built off of accidental entrepreneurs, right? It's very rare you find somebody who's like, I went to school and I knew somebody who did this. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. It's almost always, I stumbled into this. I was fixing a couple computers on the side. It was, my side hustle that grew into my wife or significant other saying, yeah, this is probably more than your side thing now. This is now your full-time gig and you need to accept that and move into that. So yeah, it's cool to see you really lived that true MSP experience.
Yep.
So
I was the man in the van.
where did the podcast come from? When did that kind of evolve?
So that kind of evolved from the community that I stumbled across where I was listening to other podcasts. There was a network called Pod Nuts, and
Yep.
it was spelled N-U-T-Z. And I don't know how I came across it. I was just kind of poking around and I didn't really understand the podcast thing, but they were talking about tech. And so I started listening, and the show that I was listening to, they disappeared. And it was the Pod Nuts Pro of that Pod Nuts network where they actually were talking about business support. And so I kind of inquired about it, and the person that was doing the show, yeah, I don't really want to do it unless somebody else runs it for me. And so I said, I can do that. I had been a guest on some podcasts. I kind of understood a little bit about what it was. So I brought back the podcast where I was the host. He was the talent. So he would be the person coming on to tell the stories.
Yep.
And after, I don't know, a year or so of that, he was like, you know what, I'm good. Why don't you take the show and run with it? So I inherited the show, and then I rebranded back in, what was it, 2021 to the IT Business Podcast.
Awesome. Okay. Very cool. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's such an easy listen, right? When you get the right voice and the right kind of just message to it. And oh, there we go. We got George joining us here.
Well, DC.
It's just, and I feel like especially for techs, right? You're on the move all the time, right? You're in the van, you're going to the customer site, just being able to have that voice in the background. It's like somebody that understands you, somebody that's going through it, somebody that's, maybe reviewing a new tool, maybe just dealing with frustration, maybe a new cybersecurity issue, right? Just keeping yourself up to date. But I mean, just having it in that background, right? Podcasts are just nice listening like that. So very cool to see somebody grasping that.
I
Hello,
appreciate
gents.
How we doing, sir?
Better late than never.
He flew all the way from Amsterdam for this podcast.
That's right. I just got home.
Nice.
Yeah, a couple days in the Netherlands with our brethren from across the ocean. I like those guys and girls. They have a pretty cool community over there.
Yeah, good people.
Yeah,
Great people. Dutch
Love
MSP, man.
absolutely. Connected with the guys from Dutch MSP. It's cool, little consortium of those guys over there. Really nice guys.
Yeah, really great guys.
100%. It brings up the topic of community, right? Like Marv, great event, like what, 5 or 6 weeks ago now in New Jersey, right? With the TechCon Unplugged guys, right?
Yep.
I love the concept of everybody finding like their people, right? Like, you want to fit in and feel comfortable talking and like learning from other people. I think other than the hard way, right? I think everybody can learn the hard way. They just get punched in the face until they don't want to get punched in the face no more. But like, there's something about learning from the group, right? Rather than on your own. And then your podcast a few weeks after, like really hit home, right? Even though I think You proclaimed
Uh-oh.
me the town crier. No, it's cool. It's cool. I took it as that was a badge of honor for me, by the way. You don't need to be a mega MSP to be successful. And I think that was your messaging. I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that was the general vibe at TechCon Unplugged, for that event, right? It's like, hey, most of the people there weren't really super big mega MSPs, right? They didn't go and acquire, merge, or, just been at it for so long that they have 100 employees, right? Like everybody has their comfort level on what they want to do. And like the one session you did while I was in the back of the room, and yes, I almost fell off my chair, but that's okay. I was like, yeah, you don't need to have commas and zeros to the point where you're some multi-million-dollar entity to be successful. I want to talk about that for a little bit.
So, of course, I've had many conversations since then. Thank you, Town Crier, for starting that. But I don't know that it was necessary. I don't think that was intended to be that focus on that conference. I think it just ended up being that way. But it is something that I've just started to take more to heart and to speak up, because I think there's a separation that's happening in the channel. And it's a separation that I don't think should be happening. There are thousands, if not millions, of solo techs that are out supporting businesses and residential customers.
Mhm.
They're doing tech.
Mhm.
They're doing a lot of the same things that we are. Now, they may not be doing high-level tech. They may not be doing 24/7 support. They may not be doing, HIPAA stuff. But for the most part, small companies and solo techs are doing the same things that we are. And we should be helping each other regardless of our size. So that was one thing I wanted to get out there. The other thing is, I'm probably, I could have grown. At one time, I did have full-time techs. There were aspirations of growing, but I got to the point where I think a lot of people get to, where more money, more people, more problems.
More
Mhm.
headaches.
And there are so many business owners that are at that, 1 million, 1.5, 2 million, that they're frustrated because of all these things they have to deal with. And either they're stuck at a plateau because they can't figure out how to get to the next step, or for some other reason they realize, you know what, I hate dealing with employees. Listen, it's fine. Find your comfort level wherever it is. And I've just gotten to the point where I said, look, I'm making good money. I'm not the trunk slammer that everybody claims solo techs are, which is, what I just want to get that point out there to the solo techs. You don't have to feel bad for being a solo tech.
Yeah, I
And
think there's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you can make money being a solo tech. I'm not, some guy living in my mom's basement, working out of my house. I've got a nice office. You guys haven't, Bardisi, you should get up here. I've got a big office. And when people come down to visit me, they're like, okay, we've got 5 techs in a space half this small. So it can be done. And I'm not hurting for money. When COVID came, I had this chat the other day with somebody where we were looking at all the PPE, the PPP loans, or whatever that money was they were giving away, and everybody was scrambling to get money. I didn't take money. And people in my family are yelling and screaming, why aren't you taking the money? I'm like, I don't need it. I've got money in the bank. I can pay my bills. I had attorneys, of course, that, always view themselves as essential. So I didn't lose any customers during that time. I'm fine. And other people can be just as fine. So those are the types of things where I wanted to get across to the community. And I'm not doing it by creating my own community. I'm just being a part of everybody else's. So I'm sorry, Alec, you were getting ready to say something.
No. I honestly, I love that message. I think that George and I, we've had this conversation 100 times. In the earlier days, right, back, 10 years ago or so on the channel, it was very this castle mentality, right? You're a competitor of mine. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I'm not going to tell you what's in my stack. We're not going to discuss scripting. Like, everything's trade secret. Don't come near me or my clients. And I feel it's lifted a lot in many circles, at least. And I love that, right? Ken Patterson's a huge advocate for this. And I've been at different shows where he'll connect different people who are doing different things. You know, hey, Marv, you really focus on this person's really focusing on cybersecurity. Let's connect you and you guys can hand off leads, or you do medical, they do legal, you get leads for each other, pass them across. And I love seeing that collaboration happen. And I don't think it just has to happen up here. I think it can happen down here too. You know, and you're right. I think legacy plan plays a big part of that, right? What do you want? You know, not everyone wants the Ferrari and the Lamborghini and the big mansion house, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, I just want to have enough that I'm feeling comfortable and I can spend time with my kids and I can have a decent enough house with the dog in the yard.
And I think the foundation of what Marv was talking about, because I was at TechCon and I was in the room and I listened and I was talking to the people in the crowd outside of that one session, but the industry, take that however you want. The industry, the subvertical, the sandbox that we all play in, seems to have put out a message on this is what successful looks like.
For sure.
And if you're not that picture, then you might as well just shut it down, turn the lights off and go home. And I do believe that that's not a correct message. There is multiple versions of what successful looks like. It's not just one way. But so much emphasis and spotlight has been put on just this one photo that everybody should be running after. It's created, you know, like a multi-class system in the sandbox that shouldn't exist. And see that so I agree. Like maybe I've taken it to a step. You didn't say those exact words, Marv, right? This is me talking, but like we're all in the technology business. Not everybody needs to be a clone of the company 10 miles down the road, right? And they can still be successful. And so I think that if we can agree on the fact that there isn't just one picture that's right, there's many roads to be successful, then I think we can cater then to people in different lanes and still make sure that people are getting what they need rather than getting the desert mentality. And so that's, you know, I believe it. I'm not just regurgitating, Marv. I actually truly, you know, buy that messaging.
So here's where we're also needing to really start to focus on, you know, and I don't know who coined the $300 per user tagline, but
I mean,
that seems
changed,
to be,
by the way.
that seems to be,
800,000, 1,500. I mean,
yeah, but I think when you're talking to people, you got to be at 300. So we've got a couple of issues with that. So if everybody is, you know, discarding customers that won't pay $300 a user, who's catering to them? Because there are customers that are willing to pay 100 per user. So that needs to be taken care of. We're also dealing with vendors who are going direct to market.
Mm-hmm.
So our customers a lot of times know what our price points are.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody like Enable or Kaseya or ConnectWise are going to our customers and saying, hey, internal IT will give you the same stuff that the MSPs have, here's your price, and they see that it's, you know, $4 an endpoint, then they are going to look at us and say, well, why are we paying you 300? We've got to justify all of that. Now, we certainly can, because there's labor costs, there's management costs, there's all these things that we can get into it. But we're starting to run into this issue where everybody knows what's out there. And so it all becomes the experience. What experience can you bring to the customer that's going to make them want to call you and say, you know what, I'll spend the money because you're taking care of me. You're making sure I'm happy. You're making sure I'm okay. We don't have downtime. You've got to do that whole experience. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to have, you know, customers at $300 an endpoint, but down here in Florida, I've got people that are charging $25, you know, an endpoint. That's
Okay.
obedience.
I mean, I hope they're successful with that. Cool. One of the things that Marv and yeah, this was touched, I think, in a couple of different ways back at TechCon, but I'm going to put it again here. Like MSPs seem to get sucked into the idea that, you know, all of these, like the stack, all these different SaaS products, technology from outside vendors that you're basically putting a rubber band around, right, and offering, right, to your customer. And I think part of the problem is that there's this gray area where, you know, the labor costs are getting eroded because the seat cost is being consumed by these other outside products that you're effectively reselling, right?
Yeah.
So if it's eroding the ability for you to take home what you need to in order to cover your, lifestyle, cost of living, etc., then are you working for you, or are you working for somebody else who's just selling through, through you kind of thing?
I mean, that is an issue because yeah, if people are trying to give out the number, here's my cost per user, and then I've got to make sure I've got that margin built into that. That's where it becomes an issue. So a while back, I just abandoned that price model, and I built my customers a price per endpoint
Okay.
and a price per user. So I have
Both.
situations. Yeah, I do both.
Okay.
And we're not 100% there yet, but
Okay.
a lot of the invoices, I still may have it shown as one line item for, monthly support.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got some customers where they see what that price is. Here's their price per endpoint. Here's their price per user. Here's their price for secure remote access or my true grid. Here's how much for backup, so that they can see that, and they can see that listen, I'm not trying to gouge you. These are my costs. And this is why when you boil it down. So your comment about working for the vendors, and that's where, all right, I'm gonna say something here. I'm not sure how it's going to be received, but we are now in this vendor education mode.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bardisi, you're a vendor, and vendors are, now being tasked with educating MSPs and being tasked with show us how to run our business. So that's where some of how we're being told, well, you need to be charging this, without knowing the geographic area of where the MSP is, without knowing the economic impact of something in that area is having, not knowing what the impact of competition is in that area. You're just being told, sell this because we're selling you this solution at this price. So your margin should be this. So yes, we can be in a situation where we're selling based on the vendor, because if I've got to have my RMM, my PSA, my, True Grid, my, Threat Locker, and it's going to cost me this. And then, oh yeah, by the way, I got to throw in 365, preferably business premium, even though most customers have no idea why they would need it and always want the basic. The costs get up. So you could be at, $70 per endpoint just by cost alone. So I understand trying to say, well, you need to be selling at $300 a user. But the customer's looking at us saying, I can go hire somebody at $20 an hour to bring them into my office to do the same thing. And of course, we're going to be like, no, you can't. but they're going to try.
Plus benefits, plus payroll taxes,
Yeah.
plus.
And it's really interesting that, and look, we've all seen like some of the stuff that comes downstream, right? They always say crap rolls downhill, but like, NCE, right, was all the rage, and it's about to hit again for everybody that kind of was still looped into that legacy, right? And they're just going to force you into the new pricing. And it's like, well, hey, like, I really do want to line this. If I'm going to resell it, I want to make sure you understand if the price goes up, it's not me, right? Like, I'm just passing down what's coming from on high, right? So like, and a lot of people were trained for a long time, Marv, to like put it all into one price so that it isn't separated out, so that you don't know, what the security software is versus the backup software versus your labor versus whatever, Microsoft. And then like now we're going back the other way where it's like, no, I'm about transparency, right? If there's a price increase, you're going to understand the price increase is actually not always just me saying I need to make more money. It's I just got to pass the cost downhill.
We have to do that. I mean, listen, how frustrated do we get when a vendor raises a price on us and don't really tell us why?
All the time.
I mean, it happens. Microsoft raises prices. Everybody does it. It seems as though we're the only ones that have to kind of justify it.
Yep.
Netflix is raising prices again. I mean, people, I mean, there's, Comcast raises its prices all the time. FPL, our power company down here, raises price. I mean, everybody understands prices goes up, but for some reason, as the IT guys or gals, well, you can't raise your prices. Yeah, I have to.
Yep.
I get to survive too.
well, even to that point though, right? Like, I'm gonna go slightly off topic, but it's still in the same conversation, right? Like every Reddit, every Discord, every Slack, every Facebook, right? You hear about techs getting burned out, they're not getting paid enough, they're getting overworked, they're always on call. I'm never able to go on vacation, and we've heard all of it, right? Like, and it's just always in a vicious black hole cycle that never stops. But then, like, some of it's just the economics of how the business runs, right? In order for the employee, assuming you have them, to get paid more, you need to be charging more to the end customer, right? Assuming they're willing to pay, right? And then, like, you know, there has to be a little if you can't keep on, everything has to be in alignment, right? If you keep paying people more but you never raise your price, you're gonna have a money problem, right? It's really basic stuff, but every time I see those posts and I'm like, well, hey, like there's a larger business discussion to be had, right? Like, how did you structure things with your customer, right? Some people say, hey, negotiate that the rates go up every so often upfront in your agreement, right? Like, hey, every so many months, every so many years, whatever, instead of waiting 5 years to go and raise your price, put in, hey, we might raise the price 4% or whatever, pick a percent, every X amount of time in your thing, right? And some people have adopted that model. Other people, like, they address it, depending on how you structure your stuff, right? Like, I think, Marv, I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but like a lot of people don't like to lock their end customer into a specific term, right? Like, hey, we're going to sign a 1-year contract, a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year. Like, some people are like, hey, here are my rates. We'll keep working with you. And as long as you're happy, we'll keep doing it unless somebody's unhappy. And then we'll figure out if we need to part ways, right? Like, but how do you factor in adjusting rates with the, hey, I'm not putting you in a term model? How do you do that?
So I'll be honest, I don't do very many long-term contracts. Most of my clients are still month to month. And these are clients that were with me back in 2000, 2005, 2010. So forcing them to change, it just really hasn't been something I've pushed on them. Now, a couple I have, and they understand, because if they're growing and they require more attention, then you know what, you need to pay for that more attention. So some of them have. I've only done 1-year agreements for those customers. I've never gone the 3-year route, which is what I think part of the industry is pushing towards, is, do a 3-year, because that's what we're having to sign for our tools. And your point about why it's hard to lock a customer in, because if you're in a 3-year agreement, they could still raise your price.
Mm-hmm.
Which you're like, well, what's the point of locking it in if you're going to raise my price? And then you got to turn around and go to your customer that you've also locked into a 3-year. Hey, I got to raise your price. Well, you told me this was a 3-year deal. So I like the ability to fluctuate. And I tell them, look, prices go up, they go up. Prices go down, we'll save you if we can. Now, most of the time prices don't go down, so we don't have that discussion. Although I did do it once. I've done it once for a customer where literally their requirements went down, and we did, negotiate down for them. And they were happy as can be. And they were a big client of ours until they got bought last year. And they finally let go of them this year, not because of anything just because they got absorbed into a bigger company. So I like the ability of being able to adjust on the fly. I also, that's one of the reasons why I separate out charges, so that they can see, well, if one thing goes up, that's the only thing on the line item that goes up on that invoice. And they understand that. In some cases, we're just basically not adding that business to our portfolio. And we're saying, okay, you're going to buy your 365 from AppRiver. We're a partner, so we'll get our money on the back end there. Or you're going to buy your phone service through this company. You're going to pay them directly. So I don't have to worry about that. And we're considering that for a lot of things where, the Microsoft NCE is kind of what pushed that for me. I don't want to be responsible for a customer who at, month 2, decides that they're going to leave or change or whatever. I just had this with a customer Actually, this particular customer that got absorbed, they're on NCE, and they literally had to change their domain to the new domain for the, the new company, but they didn't need the old one anymore. And they're like, well, we want to cancel. And they're calling me. And I'm like, no, that's an App River deal. And,
The Microsoft deal, but yeah.
but I mean, it's like, I can't help you. And App River's like, no, this is an NCE agreement. This is what it is. And you're trying to cancel in I think it was month 5. And they're like, no, you've got 7 more months. You're willing to buy it out if you want, but that's the way it is. And so it's frustrating. It's tough. So you're asking me how I deal with it. That's how I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to just deal with it as I go, being as open and honest with my customers as possible, and, trying to structure it so that they can see what we see. If the price goes up for my tools, yeah, it's going to go up for you, but I'm not trying to hide it behind a one price model.
Yep. We did have a comment from Degley in the Q&A here. He said that's because we were still seen as the IT guy, even though we were well-established businesses. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that was the other shift that I've really seen over the last 5 years or so. It's really that push into stop being the guy that they call when the keyboard stops working, start being the guy that they're turning to quarterly for QBRs, and you're helping plan ahead with them, and you're understanding their growth, and you're projecting for them what their costs are going to be. And that kind of comes back to some of what you just hit on, right? And the thing that really hit in my head was the push back on techs and MSPs to not be able to raise the prices. I look at, I've worked in some larger corporations. Every year there's a minimum raise for all employees. That's just, hey, cost of living is going to go up. We know that, right? Inflation happens every year. You need to earn a little more just to even maintain your standard of living. So on the other side, it's what you guys have to add another customer if you want to kind of get your COLA, your cost of living adjustment every year. There's no, as George said, that maybe like a small, like a 4% increase, right? So that's just kind of going to protect you a little bit in there. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with Degley more. I think establishing yourself as that person that's the voice at the table, not the guy that you call when, I think this computer has a virus, send it down to Marvin, he'll clear it out for you, right? It's more than that, right? We got to help you plan. We got to be part of your business.
Well, it's an image thing, like you said, and part of it is our title. We're IT service professionals or managed service provide. So they see us as service individuals that are just like their plumber, their electrician. Hey, we call you when we need you.
Mm-hmm.
We have to change that to a professional image. And yes, we tried to do it with creating titles like, well, we want to be your virtual CIO, trusted advisor.
But your lawyer and your accountant are like, for some reason, they're like, oh, well, that's a higher profession.
Right. Well, because they have professional services groups. They call themselves professional organizations.
I think there's also this mental relation to, right, accounting and legal. Both those are going to equal money to my business. It could cost money or could add money.
Okay.
I don't think
sorry. When does accounting ever add money to your business? When
they can save you taxes in the right way.
Okay. All right. Okay. I mean, every time the lawyer bill comes in, I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I'm not gonna be able to resell this. It's all good.
And I think on the other side of it, they need to start connecting that tech done the wrong way is going to cost them money massively, right? I mean, look at MGM. I mean, how much money were they bleeding by the second through that hack? I mean, I couldn't even, just the slot machines alone being down. I would love to know the stats on it.
I have to correct you. I don't even think definition of a hack is right. It was a bamboozling.
Totally fair. Yeah. No, yeah.
Like, all they did was convince somebody that they were somebody who worked there, and had them change your password. That's it. Yep. Is that a hack, Marv?
Technically, no, but you know what? It falls in that category. It's just like ransomware. Whether it's a personal, a person-to-person interaction or an email, it's still that same philosophy. But you're right. It's the definition of hack needs to change, just like the definition of virus has changed over the years. We don't talk about viruses hitting computers anymore. So we have to adjust and change with all of our lingo, whether we're service providers or professional consultants. I don't know what it's going to be, but we've got to do some adjusting. And let me go back to something you were talking about in terms of the business model. So I had another conversation where we were talking about businesses at a certain level not being able to grow. And we talked about the whole concept of price. And I was going to mention where you talked about, we have to add, technicians or stuff. And my question to them was, well, isn't automation taking care of that? And they told me, well, no, it's not. As much as we are getting the tools and stuff, yes, some processes are being done faster.
Mhm.
And while that could commoditize our business, we still have to have people to provide that experience. You've got to be on the phone with the customer. Just because you can add a user, in 30 seconds as opposed to 30 minutes through automation, the customer's going to look at that and be like, oh, well, okay, is that all it takes? Then I'll just find the cheapest price. That's one of those battles we're fighting with making automation faster. We've got to keep that customer experience. So what they were saying is, yes, they're growing, but they're not growing and expanding their margins. And that's where their frustration is hit. And, why they hit the ceiling is, okay, well, I've invested so much in this in my business. I bought the tools. I bought this. Why can't I get ahead? Those are the discussions we really need to be having.
Listen, there's a lot of, the word automation has been out there for every year. There's a new term, right? Like a new marketing lingo, right? But the concept of automation and the reality of it never line up with the marketing message. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying, like, anytime you've ever been sold a solution, they're like, oh, it's going to automatically do this, and this. In my experience, it doesn't really ever end up that way. Like, the amount of time you need to put in to get the system to even get to the point to do that is like an uphill battle. And you may not even have that time to even get it off the ground, right? So I was just in Netherlands, right? We had I was there with Roost, they were over there, and a couple other vendors. And Roost is one of these newer, hey, like, we tie into all of your different tools so you can actually automate stuff. And I'm like, the first time I was ever sold an RMM, they told me all this stuff was just going to happen, and like, it didn't. And like, I would have to hire someone to build the stuff that I wanted, and I was like, okay, this was not what I thought it was going to be. And like, some people don't have the resources to script, or even the education to script out all of those changes, test it, QA it, make sure everything's good, then use it. And then, of course, stuff changes, right? So now you have to go back, tweak it, put it back in. By the time you're done all of that, well, maybe I could have just done it the old fashioned way and just been over, finished it one time and moved on to the next. You know what I mean, Marv? Like, you know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. So the two comments that are popping up in the Q&As about infrastructure, that's another one of our battles. And I just went through this with my tech audit that I'm going through right now. That's a project that I tried to tell the customer, look, we need a couple of months to even plan for this, because there were so many moving parts in these projects. And the customers, they think they understand infrastructure. Yeah, my computer just turns on and works. And if it doesn't, I call you. It's like, no.
And I think there's a server somewhere where stuff lives. I mean, it's about the understanding of most of those.
Yeah, infrastructure. Yeah, and that's the thing, where trying to get us on that same level. You talked about getting us to the table, getting rid of that service mentality, getting us as a professional partner.
Mhm.
Look, we need to be in this together. I'm not here just to make money for me. I'm here to help you in your business as well. So the more that we can work together and the less downtime we can provide, hey, tell me what your plans are over the next 12 months to grow the business. Maybe I can, suggest something that may save you time and money. And then you don't feel like you're just throwing IT budgets, down the drain.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's something that's always been cool with the channel in general, like our relationship, right? As vendor to MSP, when you grow, we grow. And I know that's constantly repeated, but I mean, nothing felt better than, George and I had one of our larger clients a couple of years ago who sold, and they did really well. And one of the biggest things they attributed back to was our service. And that was just a really good feeling, right? To say, hey, It worked for us. We made good money on it. It was actually a really good bargaining chip in our deal that we made. I mean, that's awesome to hear. You kind of want to see that trickle downstream, right? That same relationship should extend down to that end client, right? And hey, we're in this together. And I'm not just a suck on your business in terms of cost. I'm here trying to help your business upgrade to the next level, whether it's protecting your data, whether it's planning ahead, like you said. I mean, there's a lot.
But this is the same argument as a car, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, if I just keep on putting, the oil in the car every 3,000 miles and it runs for a couple 100,000 miles, I don't have to automatically be looking for a new car once my car loan's up. I'll keep driving it until it don't drive no more, right? Like,
Yeah, but then that Hyundai rolls by with that 100,000 mile 10-year warranty, and they might jump on that.
Cars are changing now. Remember, our cars have so many computer things in them now. It's not just that oil maintenance change anymore. There's so many other things. The cars have updates too.
Oh yeah, George constantly.
unless you bought one of those cars during the pandemic where they didn't have the chip, and so they sold it to you for a lower price without the chip in it.
There we go, Degley.
Still driving my
Still driving his Pinto.
Didn't they explode, or was that a different car?
Some of them.
Yeah, some of them. They had the gas tank too close to the crash bar, so if you got hit in the back.
Yeah. You would think after that Volkswagen Dieselgate recall, they would have recalled any car that had a gas tank problem.
Different issues. And this was back in the day when recalls were a little bit looser, like except for the I think it was the Corvair, which was just apparently terrifying to drive. The way they said this.
I want to see if Degley's insurance company actually will insure that Pinto.
If he's driving it, it's insured.
At least liability, in case somebody. So
yeah,
probably doesn't have collision on it.
Probably not.
Yeah, craziness. Marv, moving forward, right? If you just zoom out and look at the bigger industry for a second, there's constant ebb and flow, right? Constant ebb and flow. There's a lot of noise, right? There's the, hey, new companies starting up noise. We have the companies, shutting down. These people go and find something else to do. You get the, at the other end, the M&A thing, that's happening because people just love to just, take somebody else's money and, have fun with it. You have the vendors at the top side, right, that are constantly in flux, right? We've talked, I'm sure you've talked on several occasions about all the topics there. As an industry, do you think this thing is like predictable and stable, or like is every 12 months a completely different story now?
Wow. No one really asked me my opinion before. I don't think we're stable at all. I just don't see it. There are too many things in play. And with the private equity money, the venture capitalist money coming in, I think that is going to be such a big impact on our industry. And I think fragmentation might get worse before it gets better. Because, and now I don't know this to be true, but the push that I see to be so focused on the numbers is just driving people nuts. So the people that are at a point where they're like, you know what, I've had a good, 20, 30-year run, I'm out. That is going to continue. And then who's going to fill those gaps? And the new people coming in are looking at the fast track on how to grow this business, how to get that money so that I can get sold or whatever. And I just see that it's going to leave a big hole for the people in the middle that are like, look, I just need consistent service. I just need a personal touch. I don't want to be responded to by a bot. I want to be able to pick up the phone and get somebody, and if I have to leave a message, that's fine as long as somebody calls me back. Or I need to see somebody at my office once a month, once a quarter. So that personalized experience, I think, still has to exist somehow. And this push to make everything automated, this push to do everything through our remote services is going to be one thing to look at. The The consolidation that's happening at the top, the companies being bought, whether it's the vendors, whether it's the MSPs, because it's happening on both levels. The larger MSPs trying to drive us, low-level guys out. Yes, I compete against the big companies down here that are like, well, Marvin can't just support you because he doesn't have 15 techs at his disposal. That's going to happen. Companies are just going to get big just so that they can say that. So that's going to fragment us. So in terms of where we're going to be, I don't know where we're going to be. I just know that I don't see it looking good anytime soon.
Well, that's why I asked this question. Everybody's looking at this thing from a different lens, right?
Yeah.
And some people, Marv, say, hey, all this money coming in from the outside, from Wall Street, from the private equity guys, this is good. They've discovered our industry. That means we're going to be able to build it up. But the blueprint that comes along with that money doesn't seem to apply like to that thought, right?
Here's the problem. It's the same as any other industry that does this, where they're going to come in and they're going to apply templates and minimums and stuff like that. So they're going to try to drive the bottom out of the industry, get rid of the bottom feeders. Well, the problem is I don't think it's bottom feeders like, the lowest of the low. Bottom feeders are going to be MSPs that are, let's say, $1 million or less.
Okay.
That's a huge amount of MSPs. There's a ton of MSPs that are $1 million or less that are supporting customers that are at that 10, 20, 30 user thing. And so if people are going to come in and say, you only want to support customers that are $300 ahead and 100 or more users, that, wipes out a lot of the industry. Even if you're going to say, well, I've got to have a minimum of 10. Well, there's still 9 user companies that need support. So who's going to support those? The idea of minimums, I'm not really against, but I know that when a vendor, and you guys haven't hounded me, so don't think I'm pointing at you guys.
We're a non-pressure organization, Marv.
But a vendor that comes in and says, you've got to have 100, you've got to have 100, endpoint minimum or 500 endpoint minimum for X number of years. It's not that I don't think the product's good. It's just that I may not want to commit to that. Because I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 years. Not to think I won't be around, but something in cybersecurity may change and we may have to pivot on what we're providing our customers for their cybersecurity. I need to be able to change with that. It's just, I think it's just up and down right now. Yes, money coming in is good. I don't disagree with that. It's bringing eyeballs to our industry. I'm going to get in trouble. I don't think you have to spend $117 million on a stadium to draw eyes to our industry. And I live down here where that's happened. And I use that. I have products from that company. Frustrates the hell out of me, which is why I look and I go, now I know why my prices are going up. It's not to help me. It's so that you can go put your name on stuff.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I think we're going to see more of that, Marv. I don't think that's going to happen less. I think it's going to happen more.
Yeah, that actually was happening before that. I mean, back in the day, Data wanted to do the American Volleyball Championship. And I think there's some good aspects, right? Dato's whole thought back when they first did that, right? Their first round of let's broadcast out to the broad, public. Let's do a commercial. Let's do American Volleyball Championship sponsorship. All of that came with let's raise the interest where people will say, oh, damn, maybe I need that. My law firm wants the backup data. And then all those leads would come through and they'd go to the MSPs. I mean, I like that aspect of it, but
would be fine. Yeah. If they were funneling leads back to us, that would be fine. But they're not doing that.
No, they're selling direct.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part is where, and that's why I say they're forcing us out, because if my customer knows that they can get the exact same deal, or in some cases, a better deal, what the hell am I doing here? That's the frustrating part. And listen, from a business perspective, I'm not looking at it from the $1 billion view. From the $1 billion view, that may make perfect sense to them. It just doesn't make sense to me. And that's where I've got to look at it from my perspective and be like, where's this going to put me in 5 years?
Yep.
I don't know. And if I've got to fight with every vendor to keep my customer, F it, is what I'm going to say.
I think that's a real message, right? If they make it so difficult that you're basically saying, hey, I worked really hard to sell all these products into my customer, and now I'm fighting to keep the customer, still engaged, and you're going to just go around me. Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
And we've seen that a million times. The phone world, unfortunately, is riddled with that, right? It's one of the drivers of George starting, right, the phone side of the business was, that was a rampant, unfortunate business choice in that side of the world. But hopefully, it leads to a little bit of consolidation around vendors that are truly passionate around that, right? Around being true channel only companies, right? That's why Datto was so successful for so long, was that attitude and that drive of, hey, we want to work with the MSPs. If you're not an MSP, we're gonna have to pass you off to somebody locally. That's been the driver of a lot of the big successful growth stories in our industry. Hopefully that's taken as a page for kind of the next generation of tools that are coming in, and they continue that story.
Listen, I'm a big proponent of vendors that stay true to the channel. And listen, I was a Datto partner, and wasn't Datto's fault that their products are now absorbed into the mothership where, it doesn't stay that way. Enable, another tool that I use, I just went into a client last year. They have Enable products, not through an MSP, but through Enable. So it's happening everywhere. And that's the frustration. So I will continue to support the vendors in the channel. I may not use you, but I'll pimp you up. I'll have you on the show. We'll talk good stuff about you. All I'm going to say, and Georgia, you know exactly where I'm going. Just don't lie to me. Do not lie to me. Do not take money from me without providing something in return.
I agree 1,000,000,000%. I couldn't agree more. And quite frankly, it's been imbalanced for too long, and I believe it's getting worse. And so back to your point of fracturization, maybe that plays into that whole thing, but it has been imbalanced for a long time.
Yep.
So 100% agree. Marv, I appreciate you coming on. You're usually on the other side of this microphone, so nice to maybe have you on the flip side every once in a while, right? Because you're living the the story, right? You're on the street. You know what you're dealing with, and we like to hear that real world feedback, right? Instead of guessing and thinking and maybe assuming, right? I'd rather just hear
funny.
it.
It's weird. I'll just say this. I think this is already being said. I think it's being said in conferences, after hours with a beer or two. It's just not being said out in the open where people can hear it. And listen, I've been one of those people that I've sat on the sidelines and been like, okay, that's somebody else's discussion. Somebody else go argue that. And I realized that I'm in a place where, listen, this is affecting me too, personally. This is affecting my business. This is affecting food on my plate. I have a voice that maybe, maybe I should, or maybe I shouldn't say stuff. But it has to be said. So why not me?
I love it, Marv. We gonna see you at IT Nation?
I will be there. I don't know if I'm going to hang out for that block party, but I'll be there.
Oh,
Marv, you should come to the block party, man.
I come to the block party.
At least have a couple of beers with us.
You guys are crazy, man. I can't go that crazy.
I'm not telling you to do a cake stand.
Yeah,
a beer or two.
You want to do a little karaoke? You can do a little karaoke, but you want to just hang out and have a couple beers?
That's never be public karaoke. That's for sure.
Marv, where can people find more about, I assume, your podcast and, the other things that you're working on?
So you can find me pretty much everywhere. The website for the business is mbsystems.net. The website for the podcast is itbusinesspodcast.com. I'm on the socials, LinkedIn, the Facebook. You can find me. Just look for Uncle Marv.
Love it. hopefully we'll run into you down in Florida in like a week and a half or something
Yep.
like.
We'll be there.
Quick.
Talk soon, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Gentlemen.
Have a good one.